He told his mother he was going outside to see the snow. But Elias Caldwell never came back. That was 45 years ago. The storm ended, but the whispers never did. There are towns that carry scars, quiet places that never forget the tragedies buried in their past. Silver Hollow, Montana, is one of them. On the night of February 14, 1979, a snowstorm rolled in without warning. No forecast predicted it. No weather station picked it up. By the time it hit, Silver Hollow was already buried in 5 feet of snow. But the storm didn't come for the town. It came for one boy. Elias Caldwell was 9 years old. Bright, quiet, and a little odd in that way some kids are. He loved radios, old shortwave sets and ham rigs, especially the ones no one used anymore. His room was filled with them, buzzing with static at all hours. He used to say he could hear secrets in the silence. That night, as the storm howled outside, Elias left his home wearing nothing but his snow jacket, boots, and a wool cap. No one saw him after 9:12 p.m. His mother, Evelyn Caldwell, waited 15 minutes before going out to find him. What she described later would never leave her. "I saw his tracks," she said, "but only for a few feet. They just stopped. No sign of him falling, no slide, no struggle. Just one set of footprints and then nothing." Locals blamed the blizzard, but some say the storm was only a cover. Silver Hollow is nestled in a valley surrounded by thick pine woods. The town has always had its stories, of lights in the trees, of people who hear their names whispered when no one's around, and of the old radio tower on Barrow Hill, abandoned since 1954. Elias was obsessed with that tower. In his notebook, found after he vanished, he'd drawn it again and again. Sometimes with strange symbols in the sky above it. Sometimes with a figure standing at its base, always the same. A man in a long wool coat, facing away. When the storm lifted 3 days later, the town looked like it had aged a decade. Ice crusted every surface. Power was gone, but not a single power line had fallen. It was like the energy just left. They searched for Elias for weeks. Volunteers, police, helicopters. Not one trace was found, except one thing. On February 28th, his ham radio, cold and untouched in his room, crackled to life. And someone, or something, whispered through it, "Don't look for me." He walks with me now. The radio fell silent after that. Some say it was interference. Others believe Elias found a doorway that night, or was taken through one. In the next part, we'll uncover what the search team saw, and what they couldn't explain. Because Elias Caldwell didn't just vanish, something took him. They combed every inch of Silver Hollow's woods, every trail, every ravine, every frozen stream. Dogs, drones, and helicopters. But they never found Elias Caldwell, not even his scarf. And what they did find made things worse. The morning after Elias vanished, the town turned out in full force. Local law enforcement set up a command post at the Caldwell residence. Within hours, the sheriff had called in state troopers and SAR teams from 3 neighboring counties. Volunteers, nearly 200 of them, assembled in the community hall, bundled in layers, carrying thermoses, walkie-talkies, and flashlights. The woods around Silver Hollow are dense and unforgiving. There are old logging trails, half-frozen creeks, and gnarled roots that trip even seasoned hikers. The deeper you go, the more the pine needles soak up sound. It's the kind of place where yelling someone's name gets swallowed by the trees. Search dogs picked up Elias's scent near the edge of Barrow Trail. Then, just like the footprints in the snow, the scent vanished. That's when people started talking. Not about Elias, but about Barrow Hill. The night Elias disappeared, weather stations across the state were clear. No storm predicted. But Silver Hollow got buried. The local temperature dropped by 27 degrees in 2 hours. What meteorologists later called a hyper-local pressure event, the townsfolk simply called unnatural. Some swore the wind howled like voices screaming. Others said their radios and TVs buzzed with static, even the old sets that hadn't worked in years. One family reported something stranger. At 2:17 a.m., their clocks stopped. Every single one. Analog, digital, wristwatches, all frozen at the exact same moment. When they started working again, 2 hours had passed. The sheriff dismissed it as power grid anomalies. But the searchers knew something was wrong. The second day of the search uncovered something unexpected. Deep in the woods, 6 miles from town, a circle, roughly 12 feet wide, perfectly round. The snow inside the circle was melted. Steam rose from it despite sub-zero temperatures. No footprints led in or out. At the center was a small item, Elias's ham radio badge, a tiny metal emblem he'd won in a county fair for building his own antenna. It was half buried in the damp earth, still warm to the touch. One of the SAR team members took a Polaroid of the site. That picture would later go missing from evidence. And the man who took it? He quit the search the next day. When asked why, he simply said, "I felt like I was being watched. Not by a person, by something that used to be a person." On the 4th day, 2 strangers arrived in town. No one recognized them. They claimed to be volunteers from Billings, but there were no names on the roster, no record of their arrival, no vehicles parked outside the staging area. Locals described them as off. They didn't speak much. One of them carried a military-style shortwave scanner and kept it pointed at Barrow Hill the entire time. They were seen walking alone into the woods, without gear, without maps, and reappeared hours later. Clean, unshaken, and silent. When the sheriff asked them who they were with, one replied, "We monitor thresholds. They left before dawn. They've never been identified." After 12 days, the official search was called off. No body, no clothing, no signs of struggle. Just a boy who walked into a snowstorm that may not have been a snowstorm at all. The forest held its secrets, but Silver Hollow wouldn't forget, and neither would the radios, because soon they would start speaking. And one voice sounded a lot like Elias. 3 weeks after Elias vanished, a ham radio operator 40 miles away picked up a strange transmission. Faint, cracked with static, but unmistakable. It was a child's voice, and it was calling for help. Elias had been obsessed with ham radios. His father, Robert Caldwell, was a licensed operator, and Elias followed in his footsteps, earning his beginner license and even building a small transmitter from a DIY kit. The call sign he used was simple, K3ELI. It became a familiar voice on local airwaves, friendly, curious, always ending transmissions with, "This is ELI, signing off." But that night in late January, someone or something broadcasted using that same sign-off. Veteran operator Michael Hurley picked up the signal at 11:14 p.m. At first, it was just white noise, then a faint whisper. "This is ELI. Can anyone hear me? It's so cold." Hurley logged the frequency and time. He played the audio for police. But when the file was turned into evidence, it was blank. Within days, 3 more radio operators across the region reported similar transmissions. Each time, the signal was weak, riddled with interference, but consistent. The voice, always the same. A boy sounding afraid, disoriented, and begging for help. The phrasing grew stranger. In one log, "There are people here, but their faces don't move." Another, "The snow isn't melting here, it's watching me." And in the final known broadcast, Elias, or what sounded like Elias, spoke just one sentence. "It's not a forest anymore, it's a mouth." After that, silence. No more transmissions were ever recorded on his call sign. The radio at the Caldwell house remained untouched since the night Elias disappeared. But according to neighbors, the family began experiencing unexplainable phenomena. The attic, where Elias kept his equipment, would light up at night, even when the power was off. One night, Robert claimed he heard static coming from the attic. When he went to check, the radio was glowing, even though it hadn't worked in weeks. No batteries, no connection. And in the dark, a voice whispered, "Dad? It's me. Don't come looking anymore. Please." He never spoke of it again. Within a month, the family sold the house and left town. No forwarding address. A local librarian, May Winslow, stumbled across something buried in the archives. Old radio logs, handwritten. Dated 1952. The handwriting belonged to a man named Curtis Alden, a forest ranger who'd lived in Silver Hollow before the Caldwell family was ever there. One entry read, "Strange signal again. Sounds like a child. Says he's trapped in the trees. Asked me not to follow the lights." Another log, days later, recorded, "He called himself Eli. Keeps repeating the same phrase, 'It's a mouth. It's a mouth. It's a mouth.'" Curtis Alden vanished later that year. Never found. Sound familiar? To this day, Elias Caldwell's frequency, K3ELI, remains assigned, but inactive. Yet, every few years, a new report surfaces. Someone, somewhere, hears a child's voice on shortwave, lost, repeating strange phrases, calling from the cold. Experts say it's interference, cross signals, old transmissions bouncing back from the ionosphere, but the locals of Silver Hollow know better. They say some voices never leave the forest. They just echo back. When the trees decide to open their mouths again. Long before Elias Caldwell vanished, others had already disappeared in the shadow of Barrow Hill. Children, hikers, even entire families. Some were reported missing. Others, simply forgotten. Until now. Silver Hollow's official history is clean, picturesque. A quiet town built around logging and cold winters. But its unofficial history tells a darker story. Barrow Hill has always had a reputation. Locals whispered about it in bars, warned newcomers to stay away after dark, and kept their kids close during winter. Between 1936 and 1991, 11 people disappeared within a 10-mile radius of the hill. All during winter, all in the weeks surrounding the new moon. The victims had little in common. Ages ranged from 6 to 54. No connections, no motives, and in every case, no remains, no personal effects, no trails, just cold wind and silence. And sometimes the same phrase in police notes. Last seen walking toward Barrow Hill. In January 1958, 6-year-old Samuel Breyer went missing during a family sledding trip. His parents turned around for less than a minute, and he was gone. The only clue left behind was a small mitten stuck to the bark of a tree 20 feet off the ground. The search lasted 10 days. No sign of Samuel. But 3 months later, something chilling happened. A woman hiking the far side of Barrow Hill heard crying. When she turned, she saw a boy standing beneath a pine tree, soaked, barefoot, and staring straight through her. Before she could speak, the boy whispered, "It's not snow. Don't let it touch you." Then he vanished. When she gave a description to police, it matched Samuel exactly. down to the scar on his right cheek. That report was quietly buried. In 1973, the Mallory family was staying in a cabin near Barrow Hill, a winter retreat, off-grid, peaceful, remote. One night, the family radioed the ranger station, saying there were figures standing just beyond the tree line, watching, not moving. When rangers arrived the next morning, the cabin was intact, no signs of struggle. But the Mallorys were gone, all of them. Mother, father, 2 daughters. The odd part? The dinner table was still set, food untouched. All clocks in the house frozen at 2:11 a.m. Investigators found one more thing, a drawing left on the wall in crayon. Stick figures holding hands. Behind them, a dark spiral with the words, "Barrow opened." The cabin was abandoned. It still stands today, padlocked and rusting. Locals call it the Quiet House. Former Deputy Wade Hensley served Silver Hollow for 25 years. After retiring, he told a different version of the events from 1991. According to his unofficial account, 2 teenagers went missing on Barrow Trail during a snowstorm. Their names were never released. Their parents were told it was an avalanche, but Hensley claimed there was no avalanche. No bodies. Instead, what they found was deeply unsettling. A narrow stone staircase protruding from the ground. It spiraled down into darkness and seemed newly unearthed, as if something beneath had pushed upward. They sent a team to investigate. Only one man came back. His name has been redacted in all public files. But Hensley remembered what he said before resigning. The stairs don't go down. They go in and they breathe. Within weeks, the case was sealed. The area was landscaped with gravel and brush. But to this day, hikers swear you can still hear a faint humming there, especially at dusk. One name, one location. Too many missing. Elias Caldwell, Samuel Breyer, the Mallory girls, the unnamed teens. Each disappearance occurred within a 13-year cycle, always in January, always within sight of Barrow Hill, and always in strange weather. This isn't coincidence, it's ritual. A clock ticking beneath the surface. And every time it strikes 0, Barrow opens. Again. In 2004, a man stumbled into a gas station 20 miles outside Silver Hollow. His clothes were torn, his eyes wide with terror. He claimed he'd been inside Barrow Hill for over a year, only he hadn't aged a day. And the first thing he asked was, "Is the boy still missing?" Thomas Riley was a drifter, mid-30s, no fixed address. Locals remembered him as quiet, polite, always sketching in a tattered notebook. He came to Silver Hollow in late 2002 and camped near Barrow Hill during the winter. Then he disappeared. No one searched. No one really noticed. Until the night he reappeared. Bloodied, barefoot, and repeating the same words. It knows your name. It waits for you to say it back. When emergency responders arrived, he was curled in a fetal position, clutching a crude wooden carving. It was a child's face, hollow eyes, mouth open wide. Thomas was taken to the county hospital for evaluation, diagnosed with acute trauma and dissociative psychosis. But his attending psychiatrist, Dr. Miriam Hall, wasn't convinced he was insane. She recorded over 6 hours of interviews. Only fragments remain. Here's what he told her. It isn't a place, not really. Barrow Hill is just the lid, the seal. Underneath, it shifts. It's all roots and bones and voices made of light. He claimed the forest called to him, that he followed faint laughter into a gully where the snow didn't fall right, where the sound of his own breath echoed back in someone else's voice. And when he stepped between the trees, he didn't walk deeper. He fell. He said it was a spiral, a descent. And that time worked differently there. He didn't eat, didn't sleep, but something kept him alive. Something that kept showing him a boy with blonde hair, standing very still. He kept sketching, Thomas whispered, over and over. Same tree, same hill. But in the last one, he drew a door. Thomas's notebook was filled with images, hundreds of them. The same scenes, repeated obsessively. A staircase winding down into roots. A child's hand reaching out of a tree hollow. A shadow behind Elias Caldwell's bedroom window, drawn years before Elias was ever reported missing. And dozens of variations of one specific word scribbled over and over. Barrowed. When asked what it meant, Thomas only said, "He's not dead. But he's not here either. He's barrowed. Like me. Like all the others." Then he tore out the last page and burned it in front of the staff, screaming, "It sees when the picture's complete." After Thomas was released under psychiatric watch, he moved to a halfway house on the outskirts of town. Staff reported no major incidents for 6 months, until they found his room completely ransacked, walls covered in charcoal drawings. At the center, a large figure with no face standing over Barrow Hill, and under it, in smeared ink, the door opened again. It followed me back. The room was ice cold. The windows sealed shut, but covered in tiny handprints from the inside. No one saw Thomas again. 3 days later, someone broke into the Caldwell house, long abandoned, and carved the words, "It's still cold," into the living room wall. Security footage? Corrupted? Police report? Never released. Thomas's sketches were confiscated, but one drawing resurfaced a year later, found in a library return book with no record of being borrowed. It showed Elias Caldwell, older, gaunt, but unmistakably him, wearing a coat he wasn't last seen in. His eyes were blank, and behind him, drawn in thick black charcoal, was that same spiral staircase. The caption? "Don't call his name, he still hears it." So we're left with a question far more disturbing than, where is Elias? The real question is, what if he came back already, and we just didn't recognize what was wearing his face? There's one final piece to this puzzle. One artifact no one was supposed to find. Something left in the forest after the last snow melted. It wasn't just a clue. It was a warning. A message from a boy who shouldn't be alive, written in something that looked a lot like blood. In the spring of 2021, a hiker named Devlin Parrish was trekking near Barrow Hill after an unusually late thaw. He took a wrong turn, ended up in a part of the woods where GPS wouldn't work. No signal, no compass reading. But what he found there was stranger than lost time. A bundle, wrapped in canvas and twine, wedged in the roots of a tree that had split open like it was rotting from the inside. Inside the bundle, a child's boot, still tied. A drawing, stained, folded, nearly dissolved by moisture. And a cassette tape, old, unlabeled. The boot matched the brand Elias was last seen wearing. The drawing showed the Caldwell home, but with the windows blacked out and "Do Not Open" scrawled across the roof. And the tape, well, they played it. They shouldn't have. The audio was degraded, but clear enough to make out the voice. Static. They said I could leave if I showed them another door. Pause. But there's nothing left to open. Not anymore. So I'm closing it from this side. Faint sobbing, then laughter. Childlike. But wrong. If you find this, forget my name. Forget I was ever here. Please, please, don't say it. Don't bring me back. Then a sound, one that audio analysts described as a wet, mechanical breath. Like a machine that's alive. Or something trying to learn how to inhale. And one final whisper. Barrow isn't a place. It's a mouth. And it's hungry again. The tape was destroyed, but not before someone uploaded a rip to a ghost forum. It was deleted within 12 hours, but listeners reported hearing footsteps in their own recordings afterward, ones that weren't there during playback. The discovery reignited Elias's case. Briefly, officials issued a statement claiming the tape was a hoax, the boot non-confirmable, and the drawing likely unrelated. The items disappeared from evidence storage 2 days later. Devlin Parrish? He hasn't spoken publicly since, moved states, changed his name. But he left one message on a private Reddit thread shortly before deleting his account. Elias isn't the victim. He's the vessel. He brought something back that never wanted to leave. So where does that leave us? A boy who vanished without a trace. A hill that whispers at night. A man who returned, but never should have. And a warning etched in drawing, tape, and fire. Some places aren't meant to be searched, because the deeper you dig, the louder something knocks back. Maybe Barrow Hill never took Elias. Maybe he offered himself. And maybe, just maybe, he's still out there, watching, waiting for someone to say his name, so he can find his way home again. Some mysteries are unsolved because they can't be. Not with logic, not with science, and definitely not with hope. The story of Elias Caldwell isn't just a missing child case. It's a warning, buried beneath years of snow and silence. Not every door should be opened. Not every question should be answered. And if you're brave or foolish enough to search deeper, don't be surprised if the forest stares back. If this story left you uneasy, good. It was never meant to comfort you. But there are more stories like this. Vanished children, forbidden places, doors that lead where no one should go. So if you want more chilling tales, stories too strange to be fake and too terrifying to be real, subscribe to the channel. Like this video if you heard something you'll never unhear. Comment below. What would you do if Elias knocked on your window tonight? And remember, some names should never be spoken. But here, we whisper them anyway. Because the dark is always listening.